Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. As February comes to an end, March is right on our heels, and that means the NCAA men's basketball tournament. But that also means baseball starting up soon, and that means fantasy baseball is back. So I'm super excited to be here talking to you as I want to start a new series, 30 teams in 30 days. I'm literally going to break down each team leading up to opening day. Not the opening series like a week before, but like March 28th. That's when I want the series to be over with. Having talked about all 30 teams, talk about how they did in 2023, how I think they're going to do in 2024. I'm also going to break down some fantasy aspects of the team. Now, I'm not going to talk about big boppers. I'm not going to talk about how Ohtani or how Aaron Judge or any of these other guys are going to be hitting a ton of home runs, because we know that. We know they're going to be good. I'm going to be talking about the aspects of fantasy that someone may not understand. And by that, I mean, if you only have certain categories in your leagues, you may not care about on-base percentage or slugging or on-base plus slugging. You might not care about quality starts, or you might not care if Giancarlo Stanton strikes out a million times because it doesn't impact you at the batting average. But some of us are in leagues where those are categories, and strikeouts do count against us, and we only have a certain number of starts to get quality starts. So that is what I'm going to be talking about. Now, I am going to be referring to my notes because I have taken notes on all the teams. So to make sure I get the facts and figures right, I'm going to be referring to that throughout the conversation. That's why I want this to be a conversation. I'm a guy who loves talking about sports. And if you're watching this, you either like sports as well or need something to fall asleep to because I'm boring and your eyes glaze over whenever I talk to anyone else about sports, because that's what happens with them. But in any case, you might think, how are you going to start this? What are you going to do? What's this going to look like? Well, I'm going to talk about team stats and maybe who led the team. So that might be where I talk about the Bobby Witt Juniors. Like this week, we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Royals because we're going to start with the AL Central. They're the worst team in the AL Central. So I took the winning percentage of each division, and then the worst one is who we start with. So AL Central is the first. And within that, the worst team in the AL Central, which was the Kansas City Royals. So I'm not going to talk about Bobby Witt Jr. I'll talk about how he led the team in X, Y, and Z categories, but I'm not going to go on and on because he's going to be a top pick. He's going to be someone that everyone wants. I'm going to be talking about lesser known players who might give you certain percentages in this category or certain stats in that category. Not the guys that we all know are going to do well. So let me go ahead and I'm going to start this. The Kansas City Royals were 5th in the AL Central last year with a record of 56 and 106. I'm also going to talk about their run differential. They had 183 negative run differential. Now that goes to show how bad their offense was and or how bad their pitching was. So team leaders, nothing to be surprised about. Hits, batting average, home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, total bases, and triples, Bobby Witt Jr. Now, you may not have heard on-base percentage because Maikel Garcia barely edged Witt out because he had just 502 plate appearances. Now, to be considered for any awards at the end of the year, the Triple Crown for batting, there are also a certain number of innings you have to pitch to be considered for some of those awards as well. We'll get to that in a minute. But in any case, 502 plate appearances is where you have to be to qualify for that. So he just got 502. And he edged Witt out 323 to 319. Otherwise, it would have been a clean sweep for Witt. Now, I do also want to talk about, how I'm going to go about picking some of these players. Now, some of these guys I've had on my fantasy team, others, may have been ones that beat me in a week, or may have been those surprise ones that had a breakout period of time. So that might be something that would encourage me to talk about some of these players. So it's completely random. They are people that you probably scroll through and said, no, I'm not going to draft him. Definitely not going to draft him, but may pick him up later in the waiver wire. You may have looked at his name in the waiver wire and be like, who is this guy? How do you even pronounce his name? So that's why I'm going to talk about this, because it's interesting to me. And it's also something that is going to hopefully help you win some games, potentially win a championship. So we talked a little about Bobby Witt winning all the categories and how Maikel Garcia robbed him of one. Well, if you know who Maikel Garcia is, you're probably a Royals fan, or you were looking at his stats saying, hey, his stolen base potential could help me win this week. And he had 23 stolen bases in 2023, which is pretty good. Now, it's nothing compared to Ronald Acuna, Estrella Ruiz with 70 plus, but 23 is not shabby. It's not something to scoff at. You know, I mean, next guy we're talking about, Salvador Perez, he has 6 over his entire 12-year career. So 23 in 1 year opposed to 6 over a 12-year span. So only reason you're looking at Garcia is because of his stolen bases. Now let's talk about Salvador Perez. He is 33 years old. He still has catcher eligibility. I don't know how much longer that's going to last. Hopefully, several more years, because I want him to be productive. I don't want him to have much of a decline because he is such a mainstay in the Royal system. Like Ayers Hosmer, like Moustakas, you know, those guys. However, they're going to come to an end in their days. Hosmer just retired recently. So we are on Perez now, and he's still very valuable. He had 23 home runs. He had 80 RBIs last year. He also was second on the team with doubles. So, whoa, big man has to scoot a little bit. He ain't stealing bases, but he can scoot a little bit. But he only drew 33 walks last year. That is going to cause his on-base percentage to go down a little bit. And batting .255 as a catcher is actually really good. His backup, or his, you know, if you want to talk about football terms, his spell back was Freddie Fermin, who hit .281 and also had 9 home runs, which that's pretty good. You probably didn't look at Fermin because why would you? If you have Perez or any other catcher in your league. I don't know if there are any leagues that have 30 players, so like every single catcher is off the board. But you know, you're probably looking at like Elias or I don't know, anyone else besides Fermin. I don't know. Man, I had Fermin on my team last year. Anyway, point being, Fermin probably not going to be a guy on your team unless he starts doing what he did this year to give Salvador Perez a little bit of relief and, you know, hitting that 280, popping some home runs, maybe steal a few bases or two. Now we're transitioning to someone who is maintaining catcher eligibility to someone losing catcher eligibility in MJ Melendez. Now, at best, he's going to be a 4th or 5th outfielder. He's not going to be a world beater, not a plug and play, but he does offer some statistical upside. So let me refer to my notes. He had the most doubles on the team. He also had the 2nd most triples on the team. Something else is he had the most walks on the team. He also led the team in walks in 2022. So if your league does have walks as a category or on-base percentage as a category, Melendez could be an asset to you. Again, he's not going to be the pace guy for your team. At least if he is, I really hope you have a great rest of the team. But he can help you in that category. Something else to point out, he had the most strikeouts on the team. So temper those expectations, because as great as he can be in certain situations and give you certain stats, he's going to take away in others. Moving from one guy who was pretty good at getting walks to another guy who showed he had great plate discipline in 2022 in a small sample size, Vinny Pasquantino. He batted .295 with 35 walks and only 34 runs in 2022 in that small snippet of time we saw him. So expectations were pretty high coming in 2023. He was off to a pretty slow start. His walks were down, his strikeouts were up. Definitely something off with him. His last 6 games of the season before he was ruled ineligible because of wrist surgery they had to have, he went 1 for 21. Hopefully, 2024 will bring a new and improved, healthy Vinny Pasquantino so that Royals fans, but also those who are looking for a maybe cheaper option at first other than paying big bucks if you're an auction league or a high draft pick, Vinny Pasquantino can potentially be that guy for you. Speaking of being the guy, the main guy for the Royals wasn't even on the team to start the season. If you know, you know. Cole Ragans was the man. But before we get more to him, let's talk about the team leaders. So Brady Singer led the team in wins, strikeouts, and quality starts. The wins and quality starts are very surprising. I can see the strikeouts, but the quality starts and wins, definitely not. ERA was Greinke or Singer, but neither one of them pitched the required 162 innings. The only player that pitched 162 innings for the Royals last year, Jordan Lyles. Do you know what his ERA was? I'll give you a minute. Don't look it up. 6.28, and his whip was 1.24. Now, whip wasn't terrible looking, it wasn't sexy, but 6 plus for an ERA? Oh, God, is there any reason why the Royals were in such a run differential last year? In any case, let's get to the man, Cole Ragans. So he was traded, and his first start with the Royals was July 15th. So from July 15th to September 28th, he did make several starts. He had a 5-2 record. He had a 2.64 ERA, a 1.07 whip, and he had 7 quality starts, pitching 71.2 innings. Holy cow, that's pretty good, especially for a bad team. Now, his strikeouts were up to 89, but he also did have 27 walks. So, wasn't exactly the smoothest, especially later into the season. You could tell he's getting a little tired. He did have 17 games as a reliever for the Rangers before he was moved over. But in any case, this was probably the brightest spot for the Royals the entire year. Any, fourth or fifth day that Ragans would pitch, everyone was tuning in. All Royals fans were expecting, hey, we're going to get a win. Cole Ragans has already been named the opening day starter for the Royals this year. Last year's opening day starter, Brady Singer, is someone else who is not exciting. He's not. And in fact, it's kind of bad when you want to consider him as a streamer, but he does have some streaming ability. He's not the worst in the world. He'll give you a few quality starts. Unfortunately, 2022 was an outlier, and we got super excited. He had 14 quality starts. He had 10 wins. He had 150 strikeouts. That was pretty good. However, this year, 2023, he was shut down, arm fatigue, and whenever you have arm fatigue, that's going to cause some scare. So, as much as I like Brady Singer, he's definitely someone who's probably only a streamer at best. The unfortunate thing is, when he's on, he's on. But he doesn't have a lot of support. So, Brady Singer, not terrible, but definitely got to pick your spots for him. Now, if the Royals do end up having the lead going into the ninth, they're probably going to be turned to their new closer, Will Smith, who came from the Rangers last year. So that is Cole Ragans and Will Smith, who came from the Rangers. Ragans did not get a World Series ring, unfortunately. In any case, Will Smith has been proven to be the guy in previous stints, obviously with the Rangers, and he was the go-to guy in Atlanta, and he lost it. He imploded a little bit. But in any case, he has experience in it. I think he's going to be the go-to guy. Scott Barlow led the team last year with 13 saves. I'm going to say it now. Will Smith's going to have more than 13. 14 is more than 13. Therefore, that's what I foresee. I foresee him having like 14, 15. Nothing crazy. Because it's really going to depend on the pitching. And it's going to be going back to Cole Ragans every 5th day. Hopefully that's going to get you wins. You have Brady Singer. You have a few other guys we're going to talk about, newly acquired pitchers. But I don't see this team winning a lot. Speaking of some of the new guys they got, we already talked a little bit about Will Smith. They also picked up Seth Lugo. So Seth Lugo, you might remember mostly from being in the Mets organization, being a pretty good bullpen guy. Moving over to San Diego, turning into a starter, then like a middle reliever. So they're probably going to try to have him start, and if nothing else, be the shutdown dominant middle reliever guy in front of Will Smith. They also picked up Michael Wacha to strengthen their rotation. Chris Stratton, he's going to be a bullpen piece. And these next two guys I'm pretty excited about, Hunter Renfroe and Garrett Hampson. Now, Hunter Renfroe is definitely a guy who's going to be able to add some power to that lineup. Hampson is going to be able to add some speed. However, neither one of them have been very consistent. They have been very inconsistent with their play. Last time I heard about Hampson was late 2010s with the Rockies. Now, Hunter Renfroe has been pretty consistent on teams, maybe not necessarily like with his performance, with lower batting, but I mean, he can hit the ball. He's got a little bit of power, And I don't really foresee the Royals having a whole lot of other options than to make sure they stick with Hunter Renfroe. And now for the key departures. You may not have heard of some of these guys, but as someone who has to take a deep dive looking for holds and saves wherever you can get them, and some cheapy type of strikeouts or pitchers that are going to help Matt ERA and WHIP, some of these guys were big names and are contributors to my teams. First one, Brad Keller. He did not ever contribute to my team. He is going to be out with thoracic outlet syndrome. Anyone who is a fan of Matt Harvey knows that he had it. There have been some other pitchers, but they don't come back from it. And if they do, they're definitely not the same. So hopefully he is going to be back or at least able to make a return in some capacity. Also, Zach Greinke. He was an innings eater. He was also a very interesting guy, and I'm sure individuals who have played with him in Arizona or LA or Kansas City probably have a ton of fun stories about him, but he is going to be gone. Josh Stalmont. Now, that might be a guy you have no idea who he is. He was that 6th, 7th, 8th inning guy who is going to be able to get you some strikeouts, lower your ERA, not give you a ton of whip. Taylor Clark is another pitcher that is no longer with the Royals. He's nothing spectacular, but he was an innings eater. He could take the mound every 5 days, and, he could take some pressure off of some of the other guys. Now, he put a whole heck of a lot more pressure on the offense to score runs because he'd give them up. But in any case, speaking of scoring runs, Hector Olivares is also gone. He was now a fielder for them. Again, nothing spectacular, but he was another warm body for them. So these are the key departures. Overall, I don't foresee the Royals being very good. However, the key pieces they do have are going to be able to contribute not as much as you would like if they were on better teams. Of course, Bobby Witt's going to be one of the better players, not only in the league, but definitely on the Royals. Cole Reagans might be one of the top 20, 25 pitchers in the league, but it's also going to depend on peripherals. He's not going to get the wins. He might have some quality starts. He's going to have some strikeouts, but his whip is probably going to be up as well, so that could be where it hurts you. I don't know if Will Smith is going to be as big of a contributor in the saves department, but also he is probably going to get you some strikeouts and increase your ERA and whip. More batters to at least look at: Salvador Perez if you need a catcher, and I say that because he may very well also gain eligibility at first. So valuable to be able to be a catcher, but actually playing first or DHing for a majority of the time. Of course, we talked about Vinny coming back to play first. Now, he may very well be spelled by Salvador, so Vinny will be able to be DH, and Fermin will be behind the plate. But in any case, there are definitely a few guys to look at in the outfield, including MJ Melendez, who is going to get you walks, he's going to get you strikeouts, he's going to get you doubles. He's not going to raise your batting average. These guys aren't going to be the stalwarts that are going to lead your team. These aren't going to be your pace setters. These are going to be guys who are going to help you, gain or maintain an advantage. Now, again, they're not going to be the reason you win, but they could be contributors to your team in different categories. So overall, Royals probably going to finish last in AL Central again, but they're going to have a good time doing it. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Next time, we're going to be talking about the Chicago White Sox. This is Jay Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.